Hey everyone, Derek Johnson with Tatango.com. I want to do a quick video, maybe a quick video, it might be actually a long video because there's a lot to discuss. And what we're going to discuss today is about shared shortcodes and AT&T's recent announcement that no longer will shared shortcodes be able to be used. So first off, what is a shortcode? A shortcode is a 5 to 6 digit phone number. So think like 12345 or 54321. Again, 5 or 6 digits depending on which one you want. And a shared shortcode is when multiple businesses, and sometimes it's thousands, tens of thousands of different businesses use the same phone number. That's a shared shortcode. A dedicated shortcode is when one business or organization uses just the one phone number. That's their phone number. Now, there's a bunch of reasons why people use shared shortcodes, primarily the cost. So a dedicated shortcode, if it's your shortcode, it's going to cost anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month to lease the phone number. That's pretty expensive. But a shared shortcode, because you're sharing it with thousands or tens of thousands of other businesses, it's going to be much, much cheaper, sometimes even free, because whoever owns the shortcode is splitting that cost, between those thousands or tens of thousands of businesses. So what happened? AT&T last week, or a little more previous to that, a couple more days, they came out and they said, number one, no longer will we provision shared shortcodes. So that means if you're interested in purchasing a shared shortcode and getting it up and running on AT&T's network, that's not going to happen. Immediately, that is the new rule. The second thing that they announced was that shared shortcodes will no longer be supported for messaging sometime in the future. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all the information they gave. They said they would give advance notice and a certain amount of advance notice, but they didn't really give any specifics, unfortunately. So as you can see, with thousands or tens of thousands of businesses using shared shortcodes, everybody's up in arms as to, okay, now what? And unfortunately, in the AT&T announcement that was communicated to us, there wasn't much more info. Now, I've been talking to everybody in the industry and getting information, so I wanted to do this video to kind of summarize what we've been hearing. Now, again, AT&T hasn't put out additional information or clarified what they meant and how long it's going to take and when this is all going to happen. So this is all kind of hearsay, or at least, people in the industry with a lot of knowledge are telling us this. So I've written down a bunch of notes. I'm going to go here, so bear with me. So first off, AT&T essentially has banned shared shortcodes. And as I said, shared shortcodes are a shortcode that is used by thousands or tens of thousands of businesses. Why? Most likely it's because of spam. Shared shortcodes are much easier because they're cheaper. A business or an organization can go and use a shared shortcode for essentially $0 and then start sending messages. Where if you get a dedicated shortcode, you have to pay $500 to $1,000 a month. So there's much more on the line. So usually spammers, and I'm generalizing here, but usually spammers will pick shared shortcodes over dedicated shortcodes just because they're cheaper. And then it's very hard for the carriers to actually track and monitor a shared shortcode, because if you have thousands or tens of thousands of businesses using the same 5-digit phone number, if there's one bad apple in there, it's very hard for the carriers to figure out, okay, which is the bad apple out of those tens or thousands of, businesses or organizations using that one phone number, and hunt them down and tell them to stop. It just is very complex. Where on the other hand, a dedicated shortcode, it's very obvious. That shortcode is owned by Ford or Macy's or Toyota. That's their phone number. If they screw up, the carriers can go to that brand and talk directly to them. So I'm thinking that's why they announced this. It's essentially, I think, to cut down on spam and to kind of curtail what's happening, what has happened on shared shortcodes. And that's why they're not going to allow them in the future as well to be newly provisioned. So I have a bunch of notes here. That's kind of the top level. I have heard that this will be implemented where if you have if you're using a shared shortcode It will go into effect sometime in Q1 of 2019. And I'm shooting this video right now, and it is October 30th, 2018. So you have a little bit of time. I have heard that it might take even longer. Again, we don't know because AT&T hasn't come out and given us additional information, but this is just information I'm gathering from people in the industry and people with knowledge of what's going on. Let's see here. So all indications, this is my second note here, all indications point to every other wireless carrier in the United States following AT&T's lead. So usually what happens in mobile messaging is one carrier will put something out there, see what the reaction is, see how it goes, and then all the carriers will follow. This is similar to carrier fees. So if you send via short code, you'll realize that Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they have their own specific little carrier add-on fees. Well, that started with one carrier, and then another carrier followed, and another carrier, and just recently AT&T added their own carrier fees as well. So everybody in this industry essentially lets one carrier, kind of lead the way, and then everybody follows. So I don't think this is just specific to AT&T. It is currently specific to AT&T, but in the future, I think a lot of carriers will follow suit. So with that in mind, what are brands or organizations supposed to do if they're using a shared shortcode? So this is very heavily debated on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I'm getting a lot of emails because there are a lot of brands and organizations that are using shared shortcodes. So unfortunately, right now, the only option, if you're sending marketing or promotional mass messaging, which means you're sitting at your computer, you have a list of phone numbers, hopefully opted in because that's federal law here in the United States, and you're typing out a message and clicking send. The only viable option you currently have, you can send via shared shortcode because they haven't banned them yet. It's coming sometime soon. But the only other option you have is to move to a dedicated shortcode. So going from a shared shortcode to a dedicated. That is the only option that we are aware of, that everybody else in the industry is aware of. That's the only option that AT&T has really given their customers. So going from a shared shortcode to a dedicated shortcode. Now, unfortunately, that has additional cost. A dedicated shortcode is going to cost anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a month. That's in addition to everything else that goes on. So there are going to be a lot of small businesses and organizations currently that have nowhere to go because they can't afford the $500 to $1,000 a month, and there's nowhere else to go. Now, there was one interesting thing that was mentioned in the announcement, and that is they're calling it 10DLC. It's essentially 10-digit long code. In our industry, there's short codes, which are the short codes, 5 to 6 characters. Then there's the long codes, which are regular phone numbers. But currently, you cannot send mass marketing, or promotional messages via long codes. That's just a rule we have. So unfortunately, right now, if you're on a shared shortcode, you only have the option to go to a dedicated shortcode. You can't move to a long code. Now, what's interesting is from the discussions we've had with people in the industry and the reference to the 10DLC in the email announcement from AT&T, what we found is that AT&T and eventually all the other wireless carriers will eventually roll out an option for 10-digit long codes for, we think, marketing purposes. Because right now you cannot send a marketing message via long code, so those 10-digit phone numbers. But we think that the carriers, all of them, are actually going to roll out this 10-digit long code system, which will essentially open up some opportunities for maybe the smaller businesses, maybe the organizations that they can't go to a dedicated short code because of the money. And they're looking for more of an option like a long code. Long codes are cheap, sometimes even $1 per month. So you have kind of the $1 per month or the $500 to $1,000 a month. There's a big gap in between the two. So again, make this very, very clear. Currently, 10-digit long codes are not to be used for marketing purposes. That's been years it's been like that. The only thing right now that is approved by the wireless carriers, and especially AT&T, is dedicated short codes. So make that very clear. But let's talk about this 10-digit long code project that the carriers are working on. So when the 10-digit long codes are released, essentially, and it's this new program, you can buy a 10-digit long code right now, but they're coming out with this new vetting process, and they're going to be monitoring and filtering for spam. It's kind of like long codes v2, version 2. So when these long codes come out, it's not going to be a free-for-all like you have with dedicated short codes, where essentially you vet the short code, and you can, hopefully somebody is watching it and making sure that there's no spam. That's what companies like Tatango and aggregators do. But then on the long code side, there's going to be some rules, and these rules are really going to make sure that only the traffic that AT&T and the carriers want are going to run on that, and that really it's going to limit mass messaging really for small businesses. If you're a large business or even a medium-sized business, the mechanics of a long code just won't work. And let me explain what that is. So currently, if you want to send a mass message on a long code, you're limited to one message per second. That actually sounds like a lot, but it isn't. So one message per second, let's say there's 60 seconds, that's 60 messages per second. Now it's starting to sound really slow. So what I did here is I took, let's say you have 50,000 phone numbers, so 50,000 opted-in phone numbers, and you are sending on a long code currently. Currently, long codes are one message per second. Again, you're not even supposed to be doing this because it's marketing or promotional messaging, but let's just play it out. That would take 14 hours to get out your message to all your subscribers. So you start sending in the morning, it would be nighttime until all of your people get your message. Now, let's say if you're Subway, that's just impossible, because if you want people to come for lunch and you start sending in the morning, they're going to get it at night, and 50,000 subscribers isn't even that many subscribers. Companies like Subway have millions of subscribers, so at one message per second, it would take days or even months to get out one individual message. So that's one of the current limitations. We do think, and I've heard from a lot of people, that they will increase the throughput of long code messaging to better support some of these small businesses and organizations. Now, I don't know what that is going to be. No one knows at this point. I think AT&T and the carriers are really the only ones that know, and they haven't told anybody. I do think it's not going to be much, maybe 5 messages per second, 10 messages per second, where on a dedicated short code, you're looking at 1,000 messages a second. It's really unlimited. It's more based on the carriers and kind of content. But when you look at a long code, right now you're at 1 message per second. Maybe they'll bump it up to 5 or 10 messages per second. So if you have 500 or 1,000 subscribers, that might actually work well for you because to send out to 1,000 people will take maybe half an hour, which is okay. But if you have a large list, 50,000 subscribers, million subscribers, the real only option will be dedicated shortcode, because you're going to be able to get up into that 1,000 message per second range, where a long code just will never be able to get there. So that's the first thing that the carriers, when they announce, hopefully, that they're going to roll out long codes for marketing purposes, that will be one of their announcements, that they're increasing the throughput to allow a little more throughput, but not enough that it competes with the dedicated shortcode. Now, the second component, which we have no clue about right now, is what they are going to allow and not allow on a long code. It's very confusing. Long code, shared, short codes, and dedicated. I can see where the confusion in our industry comes from. So on a long code, currently, there's only very specific things that you can send on a long code. And one of those things you cannot send is a marketing message. So what I'm expecting from AT&T, and what people in the industry are expecting, is they're going to open it up and say, now you can send marketing messages via long code. But they're going to be very, very strict as to what kind of marketing messages. They're going to limit the throughput. again, we don't know what those restrictions are going to be, or if they're actually going to come out and say you can send marketing messages on a long code. So my advice right now is, if you are a small business on a shared short code, I would not do anything. I would just wait, because you don't want to move to a long code and the carriers go, oh no, we still believe that you shouldn't be able to send marketing messages on a long code, and then your traffic gets blocked. If you're a mid-sized business or an enterprise business and you're on a shared short code, now is the time. There is no waiting, because you know that dedicated short codes are what you should be using, based on what the carriers have told us in terms of throughput and content. So it is kind of a waiting game for those small businesses, because I wouldn't move yourself over to a long code until the carriers actually say that you can send the kind of traffic that you're sending via long code. So wait on that. Now, it's interesting. I made some notes here about what's going to be happening on these long codes. Is, from what we've heard, the carriers are going to actually be monitoring the traffic that is going on long codes. And they currently do this, but I think they're going to step it up on long codes, especially if they're shifting a huge amount of small businesses and organizations to those long codes. So they're going to be monitoring for, spam requests or spam complaints. They're going to be monitoring for content that shouldn't be in there. So maybe they say, yes, you can do marketing, but you can't do credit card offers, marijuana, nightclubs, liquor, alcohol, and what they'll do is they're actually going to be scraping and monitoring each individual message on these long codes for this content, and then essentially blocking it at the carrier level so that the consumer doesn't receive these messages. So we're still waiting for what is going to be blocked and what isn't going to be blocked, but that's going to allow the carriers to protect their consumers, the AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon customer, from receiving things that they shouldn't on a long code. Now, on a dedicated code, there are some restrictions, but they don't screen short code traffic, because essentially it's vetted traffic, it's dedicated, it's much easier to track, and there's really only a certain amount of dedicated short codes in the United States, maybe 8,000-10,000, somewhere in that range, where long codes, there's going to be hundreds of thousands, millions of long codes. So it's not going to be as easy for the carriers to monitor long codes as it is dedicated short codes. So what I found interesting is, let's say all this goes through, but what about vetting? Because on a dedicated short code, there are organizations, and you have to submit paperwork for each individual business or brand or organization to the wireless carriers. They have to approve the dedicated short code, then you can send traffic on it. Long codes will be interesting, because instead of approving, at least this is what we're hearing, again, nothing set in stone, but at least what we're hearing for long codes is that it won't be approved per long code. So let's say there's 5 small coffee shops. You won't approve with the wireless carriers every single coffee shop, all 5 of them. What the carriers and the aggregators are going to do is they're going to approve essentially the platform provider, which will be companies kind of like Tatango that provide the software, around the long codes and short codes. The carriers are going to vet essentially companies like Tatango and say, is Tatango a legitimate company? Do they know the rules? And if they know the rules, we'll approve software companies like Tatango. And then because those companies are approved, they can issue their businesses and organizations that are using the software long codes, essentially. So they're passing it off, saying, instead of individually approving each one from the wireless carriers, which would take a ton of time because there's just so many small businesses, they're going to say, we will approve companies, the software provider, and then it's the software provider's responsibility to essentially monitor and approve the use of each individual code, long code, on their platform. Now, at this point, I don't think Tatango is going to get into the long code messaging. We have kind of cemented ourselves over the last 11 years now as a dedicated short code provider. The reason is you get the high throughputs, you get the MMS, You get the really nice 5-digit number. It's recognizable in the industry. Consumers like it. It's just a much better solution for a large enterprise customer. But I realize out there are these customers that are small businesses or organization, and they're kind of right now have been left out in terms of what they should be doing, because AT&T essentially said no more shared short codes, but they don't have an alternative for the small guys. But from what we're hearing, it will be long codes, but there are going to be a ton of stipulations which will essentially make long codes not able to be used by large enterprise or mid enterprise businesses. So anyway, that's what I'm hearing. Again, this is all hearsay. This is from people I'm talking to. I've been on the phone all week with everybody, and we're trying to get answers. I have heard that AT&T is putting out additional information in the next week or two. So hopefully that will clarify a lot of things. We'll get those restrictions on long codes, what the throughput is, and then exactly what will be allowed to be sent via long code. But if you're an enterprise business, you're a mid-market business, you need to, you have a large list of subscribers, and you don't want to be filtered. You don't want your messaging to be filtered. You want to stick on a dedicated short code. I want to make that very clear. I don't want to see mid-market enterprise customers that are on shared short codes thinking they can go to long codes. The limitations and the technical limitations will just make it impossible. So hopefully that clears up a lot of stuff. I know there's still a lot of questions out there. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment wherever you're watching this, and we will answer it as soon as we can. And everybody have a great week and good, hopefully, start to your November.